Why was her hand trembling before the throttle even moved? She hadn't noticed it at first, not until the light changed across the cockpit glass. It wasn't fear, it wasn't doubt, but something inside Eden's grip flexed, just once, as if her body already knew what her mind hadn't yet admitted. At 0720, the BACN relay bird went dark. No signal, no ping. Just a clipped transmission that ended mid-frame, and a sky that suddenly seemed far too quiet. By 0900, Eden was airborne, F-22 at full climb, formation clean. She didn't waste words. Vapor was on her right, Ghost to her left. They moved like instincts stitched together, one breath, one will, above the coastal shelf. Terrain fell away beneath them. The world below faded into heat shimmer and cloud shadow. But she never reset the timer. The one in the top right of her HUD, 1 hour, 40 minutes. That's how long the relay had been silent. The E-11A had carried more than crew. It carried the entire tactical spine of the region. Comms, coordination, reach. Losing it wasn't just a blow. It was a fracture. And now, someone had to fly through that break. Eden's eyes flicked across her readouts, panels. Clean? Vectors? Stable? Hands? Steady. Finally, she never flew with her gloves on until the second tone. Habit, not superstition. The rescue team, the HH-6OW, was inbound. Escorted by 2 F-35s. They'd be in contested airspace for 10 minutes at most. That's all they had. Eden and her squad were here to make sure that 10 minutes was even possible. She didn't brief the team on what she suspected, didn't voice the thoughts circling in her chest like a trapped signal. The BACN hadn't dropped from turbulence. Someone had eyes, and those eyes were waiting. Still no radar returns. Vapor's voice cracked through the channel. You want us in combat, spread or stay tight. Hold formation, she said. Calm, clear. We're not showing presence yet. Let them blink first. Ghost adjusted position just a few feet, but she saw it. They were reading the same thing. The air around them was too still. The silence wasn't just radio. It was surgical. 1 hour, 43 minutes. The BACN was still gone. Eden didn't allow herself the space to wonder what had happened to the crew. Her role wasn't speculation. It was math, angles, timing, violence. If needed, but only with intent. They reached the outer limit of the corridor. Terrain below folded into jagged ridgelines. Riverbeds like old scars, shadowed by static pulling. Thunderheads, she adjusted, heading 2 east. No one questioned it. Just as the light hit their canopies, casting the trio of raptors into a perfect V across the clouds below, it happened. The radar blinked. 1 return, then 2, then more. Red. Echoes multiplied across the HUD, blooming like blood across clean fabric. These weren't random patrols. These weren't strays. They were coming. She didn't raise her voice, didn't change tone. She simply said, "Call signs, you are cleared for contact." No questions. Vapor and Ghost dropped into combat formation with practiced ease. It had begun. The first signal hit at 100 nautical miles, then another. Vector shallow, movement fast, not defensive. Intercept. Ghost checked in. 2 converging contacts, taking the left. You are cleared hot, Eden replied. Vapor. I'm trailing 1 click behind. Staying vertical. Perfect. Ghost of. His missile launched silent. No flare, no show. Eden tracked the burn. Trail. Tight. Clean. Impact. Target gone. But the kill wasn't a victory. It was bait. 5 more pings lit the radar, rising fast from terrain. Angles wrong. Pattern too perfect. Vapor. Break high right. Ghost. Return to stack, she said, already. Moving, Ghost reacted instantly. Vapor. Didn't. Vapor. Now. Missile in the air. Flaring. She cut throttle. Though below his jet. Flares streaking behind her like burning tears. The missile tracked heat, but it caught hers instead. Detonated, missed them both. Vapor's voice came back low. Lower now, thanks. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The bandits weren't chasing. Not directly. They were herding, shaping. She saw it in the radar. Same tactic she'd used a dozen times. A slow net, a wide circle, pulling them away from the HH6O's ingress lane. Ghost whispered over the internal comms. They're running a net. Same pattern as Northern Grid, last month. Eden already knew. Break left, Ghost. Vapor hold center. I'll draw the spread. What? If you separate, they'll collapse on you. They're not collapsing yet. They're shaping. I want to see how far. She pulled away. Her Raptor surged ahead. One high G bank. Then quiet. No locks, no tones. Her presence. Her presence. A ghost for their sensors to chase. It worked. 4 of them adjusted to her angle. 1 flanked, 1 climbed, 2 dropped. A net, not a strike. Behind her. Ghost and Vapor looped back toward the corridor. Eden didn't. Her altitude dropped. Fuel dipped below 85%. 1 flare gone. She was alone in contested sky. But she held. 1 radar echo pulled wide. Testing her flank. Another angle beneath. They weren't attacking. Just watching. Shaping. She keyed. Into the escort channel. Raptor lead to echo flight. Maintain corridor altitude. Transponder silence. Hold position. Copy. Raptor lead. Holding grid. Good. The airspace couldn't collapse. Not now. 3 bandits boxed her perimeter. Another signature loitered near the ridge line. Then. Ghost voice. New signature. High. Just outside range. Stealth paint or partial mask. Eden narrowed her eyes. Adjusted filter. Altitude too high for standard intercept. Timing too perfect. Another trap piece. Watching. Hold vector. She said. Let it commit. But Ghost's tone had changed. She heard it. That itch in his words. I've got a lock. 274. 503 knots. He slipped. No. Do not break. That's an order. But he'd already moved. Eden saw it on the radar. Ghost peeled off. Dove steep. Vapor shifted to cover. She pushed throttle, trying to catch too late. The signature vanished. 2 pings replaced it. Ghost. They were waiting. I'm hit. Ejecting. His voice cut. A line went dead. A bloom of fabric unfolded below. A chute. His Raptor spiraled down, vanished into the ridge. Vapor's voice cracked. Ghost is down. I'm turning to support. No. Eden's voice didn't rise. Get clear. Return to corridor grid. Now. She didn't wait for his reply. Throttle full, roll hard. Sky peeled away as she dove. 4 interceptors came for her. 2 close. 1 wide. 1 above. She let them. Let them think she'd separated too far. Let them shape the trap. Because if they were chasing her, they weren't circling the rescue team. What did it take to make someone run toward danger alone? Not orders, not protocol. It was something quieter. Something that burned low and silent inside Eden's chest. Right under the ribcage. She didn't feel brave as she dove back into contested airspace. She just felt committed. 3 enemy fighters were on her tail. 1 angled high above, watching like a hawk. The last hung back. The hammer behind the trap. They weren't pushing for the kill. They were dragging her deeper. Good. That was the point. Eden skimmed the terrain at terrain masking speed. A Raptor slicing through dry ridgelines and narrow canyons like it belonged there. She was buying seconds. Every loop, every chase, every brush with death stretched the enemy wider. Far behind her, the HH6OW was inbound. They didn't know it. Not really how thin the line was, but she did, and she wasn't going to let it snap. Fuel, 65%. Flares, 2. Options, tight. The bandits wanted control. She wanted consequence. 1 bandit locked. Eden waited. Just long enough for him to close. Then she pitched the Raptor vertical. A hard stall maneuver. Weightless, nose up, engines howling. He overshot. She rolled, dropped speed, Lock tone. Fox 3. The missile cut a clean line through the sky. Impact, one contact down. No celebration. Not here. The other two surged forward. They weren't rattled, just adapting. Eden dove low again, cut angles, forced them to follow through broken airspace. Terrain they couldn't predict, lines they couldn't hold. Her HUD flashed. Countermeasures at 1. Fuel nearing critical. She didn't flinch. Let them think she was running out. Let them see fatigue. Let them believe the chase was tipping. Because it was, but not for her. She flipped to squadron comms. Status? Vapor came in steady. Back on grid. F-35's holding. Rescue lane open. Good. That's what mattered. She switched back to internal. No graves today. She muttered. Not for them. Not if she held. The canyon twisted left. One of the two bandits tried to bracket. The other rose. Baiting her upward, she didn't bite. No climbs, no panic. She flew low. Silent, unreadable. This wasn't combat anymore. It was subtraction. Let them come. Heat shimmer blurred the sky. Ridge lines folded tight around her. Warnings flashed. Altitude low. Signal degrading. She flew by feel now. HUD blinking red, eyes narrowed. Two fighters remained, one close. Pacing just outside guns range. Teasing. The other, above, still trailing. Then the radio crackled, broken, but clear enough. Rescue team secured. LZ stable. Extraction in progress. Eden didn't answer. That wasn't her part. Her part was the chase. She flew lower. The left jet crept closer. She saw it now through the curve of glass. Not locking, not firing, just trailing. Was it intimidation? Was it a game? She didn't care. She rolled, inverted cleanly, dropped hard through a rising heat column. The sky buckled around her. G-forces slammed her spine. The enemy didn't follow. He broke off, climbed, vanished. One less, only two left. The one above shifted again, trying to bait a climb. The other below pulsed radar pings, trying to spook her. She stayed flat, silent, her breath shallow. Sweat fogged her visor. Her HUD was a flickering mess. Fuel, below safe. Flare, one time, running out. The comm pinged again. Automated, HH60W clear of threat zone. Her job was technically done, but she couldn't climb. Not now. Not with that stealth ace circling like a vulture. The canyon was her only shield. She banked left into a tighter stretch. Rocks rising like teeth. The temperature rose. The air bucked. She kept going, below. The terrain dropped into a gorge so narrow there'd be no time to adjust. One mistake, and she'd become wreckage. But she didn't miss. The low pursuer matched her, for a moment. Then Eden shifted. A shallow climb to recover airspeed. Smooth, precise, he read it wrong. Expected her to brake. He pulled vertical, exposed his flank. She had no missiles left. She didn't need them. Let him go. She turned her eyes to the last threat, one fighter. Still circling, still watching. It had seen enough. It didn't push. It turned, disengaged. The radio hissed. A clean voice, crisp through static. Extraction complete. Package secure. We're out. Thanks to you. Eden still didn't reply. Her grip on the stick hadn't loosened. The Raptor groaned beneath her. Heat strain, hydraulic drag, power flickering. But she stayed low. Followed the canyon out. Let the ridges fall away behind her like a curtain. The trap was empty now. The team was safe. The cost, paid in full. By the time she climbed above radar line, her fuel was nearly gone. The Raptor's right rudder lagged. One engine ran hot. She didn't call it in. Didn't even speak. Just turned toward home. Let the others land first. Let the quiet settle. The fight was over. But Eden was still flying. What does it mean to return when no one knows if you're coming back? Some don't return at all. Some return changed, and some come back the same, but only on the surface. Eden didn't call it in. No beacon, no distress frequency, no request. For escort, she simply angled the nose of her Raptor toward base and flew low. Tail dragging faint smoke, stabilizer twitching, systems bleeding power into the silent air. Back at the airstrip, the first of the F-35s touched down just before sunset. Then the second, both jets taxied past the tower like ghosts through haze, exhaust warping the light around them. Minutes later, the HH-6OU arrived low, steady, rotor still hot from the valley wind. The rescue team stepped off quickly, stiff, but whole. No cheers, no applause, just quiet movement, the kind that only happens when everyone knows someone else paid for this return. Vapor landed second to last. His Raptor followed another F-22 in a clean approach. No drag chute, no calls for medics, no visible damage, but his canopy stayed closed longer than usual. He sat there, helmet on, visor down, watching the western sky where amber had already begun to fade into ash. Then the controller's voice came in. Calm, neutral, almost too soft. Contact, single frame. 2 miles out. No beacon, low altitude. Vapor didn't move, but his voice was clear. I told you she'd still be flying. And then, across the valley rim, a silhouette emerged from the haze. The shape was unmistakable. A single Raptor, nose. Low, trailing smoke from the right engine. Landing gear already deployed. No flares, no strobes. No call sign. It descended in silence. Right stabilizer jerking once. Paneling along the fuselage darkened by heat scoring. Undercarriage locked early. She rode it in dead stick. No power assist. The jet skipped once on touchdown, then caught. Tires barked across the tarmac. A hard landing. Too fast, but straight. It didn't veer. It didn't fail. She rode the entire length of the runway before finally easing it to a stop near the edge of the outer lights. Steam rose from the cowling. Engine cooling with a metallic hiss that echoed down the flight line. No one moved. The canopy didn't open. Not for several seconds, and then it did. Slowly. Eden stood inside, still helmeted, braid dark with sweat, pressed against the back of her flight suit. Her harness clicked free. She didn't rush. She didn't raise a hand. She climbed down alone. Boots hitting the tarmac like punctuation marks in a sentence no one dared to speak. No applause, no welcomes. Just a few faint nods from the ground crew, and the heat-softened dust shifting slightly in her wake. She walked past the hangars, toward the shadow of the control tower, without once looking back at the jet she'd just saved. She didn't need to. There would be debriefs later, reports, reviews, replays. People would ask why she hadn't climbed, why she hadn't called, why she'd taken the chase into their skies when she could have held position, but none of those questions started here. Here. There was only the sound of a cooling airframe and the slow breath of a pilot whose job hadn't been to survive, but to hold the sky long enough so others could. Ghost's signal had been recovered. Search and rescue confirmed his chute had held. Medevac was already in motion. He was alive, stable. That's all Eden needed to hear. By the time she reached the far corner of the flight line, the light had gone full gray. Violet streaks hovered just above the mountain line. Her steps didn't waver. Her shoulders didn't drop. There were no medals waiting. No cameras, no ceremony. Just the silence of a mission that had barely held. But it had held. Her jet remained untouched at the end of the runway. No one approached. Not yet. The right paneling was scorched. The stabilizer hung just off angle. No missiles remained under the wings. It looked like a ghost returning from a different world. And in a way, it was. The control tower's lights blinked on. One by one, behind her, the last shimmer of dusk burned out. Vapor watched her from beside his own aircraft. Helmet now off, flight suit half unzipped at the collar. Hands at his sides. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. Some things don't need explanation. Not when they're lived through together. Eden passed the outer line of parked vehicles and vanished into the soft dark near the tower's base. No one followed. The base didn't celebrate, but it remembered. And above it all, the sky, now cleared, hung open and endless, not because of luck, not because of power, but because someone had held the line, alone, and didn't ask to be remembered for it. Why did the hardest part come after the landing? Not the evasive maneuvers, not the final missile, not even the moment she thought she wouldn't make it back. It was this, the quiet, the clean hallway light, the buzz of fluorescent bulbs, the sound of her own boots on polished concrete. Eden sat in the mission debrief room, still in her flight suit, gloves clipped at her belt, helmet on the table beside her. The air conditioning hummed like static. A monitor blinked muted telemetry overhead. She hadn't spoken yet. Across the table, the operations officer shuffled papers he didn't really need to read. A coffee cup sat untouched beside his elbow. The chair beside Eden remained empty. They were waiting on Ghost. He was alive. Medics confirmed it. Ejected clean, minor burns, dislocated shoulder, mild concussion. But until he walked in under his own power, it wouldn't feel real. Your HUD logs were clean, the officer finally said. Eden didn't nod, didn't speak. He hesitated. The call you made. Breaking formation, that wasn't in the flight profile. She looked up slowly. Her voice didn't carry weight, just clarity. They had eyes before we entered. Airspace. It wasn't an intercept. It was a net. You anticipated the pattern? I saw it building. He exhaled, a little too loud. You should have reported. I did, she said. With flight path, he didn't argue because he knew. There had been no time. The log showed it. The rescue team had entered the corridor. 4 minutes after Eden broke formation, 12 enemy signatures had been logged. 7 had gone dark or turned away. 5 had followed her. She pulled every single thread off the corridor, alone, and bought the rescue team the only clear sky they would see that day. No one could argue with results, but some still would. The door opened. Ghost walked in, left arm braced in a sling, face pale, jaw stiff, but standing. Eden's eyes met his once. Nothing spoken, just a glance. That was enough. He sat in the empty chair, let out a breath like he'd been holding it since he hit the ground. The officer cleared his throat. Debrief protocol starts with, Ghost raised his hand. With respect, sir. I'll give the report, but can it wait? A few minutes. The officer hesitated, then nodded and left. The room settled. Ghost leaned forward. His voice was low, the way it always was when the adrenaline faded. I should have listened. Eden didn't answer. I saw the stealth echo. Thought I had it. I didn't. Still, she stayed quiet. They used me. They used my impulse, my pattern. They knew I'd go for it. That got a response. They knew us, she said. Calm, certain. He looked up. They weren't improvising. They were replicating our architecture, our structure. Ghost nodded. Same triangle push we ran over. Northern grid, same anchor angle. Worse, Eden said. They learned from it. The silence stretched. Then she asked a question no one else had. Did you see the pilot? Ghost blinked. What? The stealth one, the ace. Did you see them? He was quiet for a moment. Then, briefly, in the sun, jet was clean. No drag, no signal leak. When I broke left. They were already there, waiting. Eden leaned back in her chair. They knew you'd come, she said. He nodded. That was the truth underneath it all. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was planned, measured, designed for a specific opponent. Her later. She stood on the tarmac again, alone. The jet was still parked at the edge of the runway, the last of the heat finally radiating off its hull. No one had touched it yet. It felt wrong. Not sacred, just unfinished, like it still had something to say. She walked around the wing. The scorch marks were deeper than they looked in flight. The right engine panel was charred along the seams. Her last flare had scorched the undercarriage during descent. The control surfaces on the left fin were stiff. She could feel it in the air. The Raptor had carried her through every twist of canyon and cloud. Now it stood still, wounded, but proud. She reached out, laid her hand gently on the nose. No salute, no ceremony, just contact. Like a promise between equals, inside, a crew chief. Waited with a clipboard. "You want us to start repairs?" Eden didn't answer right away then. "Not yet." He raised an eyebrow. "You think you'll need it again?" Her eyes stayed on the canopy glass. "No, I think I need to remember." He didn't argue, just nodded and stepped away. Some jets didn't need to fly again to be respected. Some had already done everything that mattered. As she turned back toward the hangar, Vapor appeared from the far side of the lot. Helmet slung in one hand, boots coated in dust. His voice matched hers. "Low, steady. Ghost says you saved his life." "He saved his own," Eden replied. "Not what the radar says." They walked in silence for a few steps. Then Vapor asked the one question that had been burning in the back of every survivor's mind. "Why didn't they finish you?" She didn't respond at first. Then, "Because I didn't give them the ending they wanted." Vapor nodded. He understood. The enemy hadn't expected restraint. They expected panic, a climb, a desperate attempt at glory. Instead, she'd flown low. Silent, precise, she had denied them satisfaction. And that was victory. How do you carry the weight of a mission no one saw, except the ones who owe you everything? Eden didn't linger in the spotlight, mostly because there wasn't one. The rescue was already being framed by command as a coordinated success, a team effort. Words like flawless exfil and discipline under pressure were making their way into briefings. Ghost recovery was already on the slide deck. The HH-6OW crew had returned intact. No aircraft lost, minimal casualties. It all looked clean, because the dirt had stayed in the sky, with her, in the days that followed. No one asked Eden how many times she thought the last flare wouldn't work. No one asked what it felt like to fly through a kill box built to hold her down like a net of precision and patience. They only asked for her flight logs, her HUD playback, the data. The data didn't capture the silence when you dive low enough to feel the rocks pushing heat through the fuselage. It didn't show the moment a second signature peels off, not because you beat it, but because you refuse to play its game. That kind of clarity doesn't show up on radar. Ghost stopped by her quarters once, just once. He didn't knock. Just leaned against the doorframe like the sling on his arm had fused into the moment. "I watched the HUD footage," he said. Eden didn't look up from her notebook. "I didn't think you'd pull that inverted stall off." He added, "Not at canyon floor." "I didn't think you'd follow a stealth return with no wingman," she said. Flatly, Ghost didn't flinch. He deserved that one. They stayed in silence for a while. Then he asked, softly, "You think they're done?" "No," Eden said. "I think they're testing." "What? Tactics?" "No, me." Command scheduled a tactical debrief for the following morning. Closed room, Tier 3 clearance only. Eden arrived early. The room smelled like coffee and cold wiring. Projector was already cycling overhead. Graphs, patterns, return. Trails, intercepts, names. A colonel from the analysis wing walked them through each contact. 12 total radar signatures. Of those, 7 were verified hostiles. 5 matched enemy maneuver profiles we've seen before. Ghost shifted in his seat. Profiles, sure, but not strategy. That was shaped airspace. That was a net. The colonel nodded. "We agree. The structure's familiar. The application isn't." Vapor, sitting 3 seats down, asked the question first. "You think they trained for us?" Silence. Then Eden spoke. "I don't think they trained for us. I think they trained on us." The room went still. She stood and tapped the digital projection, dragging flight vectors onto the center map. "Look at the timing, the spacing. Each Redirect happened before we adjusted heading. They were reading us in real time. One of the analysts leaned forward. Could be a eye-enhanced flight prediction. Pattern learning, there are rumors, not pattern prediction, Aiden said. Pattern recognition? They flew like us, but just a second behind. Like someone who studied the dance, but hasn't lived it, Vapor muttered. Ghost in the mirror, Eden's. Eyes didn't leave the map. They mirrored me until the last second, then pulled back. That wasn't to kill. That was to watch. The colonel frowned. You're saying they were studying your counter-responses? No, she said. I'm saying someone was flying my side of the fight and learning faster than I was. After the meeting, she stepped outside. The sun hadn't come up yet. Base lights stretched long over concrete, the distant sound of a generator echoed near the hangars. She walked until the noise disappeared, until the sky above her was just sky. No overlays, no beacons, no HUD symbology, just open, unfiltered space. She tilted her head back, closed her eyes, and for a moment, she let the silence return. Not the silence of the cockpit, not the silence of a mission barely held, but something deeper, older. The silence of a sky that had once belonged to no one. When she finally opened her eyes again, something had shifted. Not clarity, not peace, but readiness. Because if they were going to try again, and she knew they would, she needed to be faster than their memory of her. The Raptor was still in partial recovery, half-stripped inside the maintenance bay. Panels removed, wires exposed, mechanics moved around it like surgeons. She didn't interrupt. She just watched. You planning to fly again soon? One of the junior techs asked. Aiden didn't answer then. You ever rebuilt a control line mid-flight? The tech blinked. No, ma'am. Good, she said. Keep it that way. He chuckled nervously. She didn't by the end of the week. A new mission profile had been built. One Eden wasn't asked to fly. She volunteered anyway. Command. Hesitated. She didn't. Her logic was clear. If they shaped the last engagement around my reactions, then my absence could be worse than my presence. The colonel leaned forward. You think they'll expect you again? I think they'll wait for me again. And if they're faster this time? Eden's voice was calm. Then I'll change the rhythm. What if your worst enemy wasn't the one in your sights, but the one who already knew how you'd aim? That's what Eden kept thinking. Every time she reviewed her footage, every time she reran the telemetry, every time she saw that stealth. Contact disappeared just as she moved. Someone had flown like her, predicted her lines, anticipated hesitation, played patience better than she did, and that meant one thing. Whoever was up there had studied her. The next mission wasn't labeled high risk. It was a corridor recon flight, tactical sweep along the same valley from a week ago. No relay bird this time, no rescue team, just overwatch. Verify that the enemy hadn't re-established. Forward positioning, Eden volunteered. Command said nothing for a full day. Then, approved. Vapor was assigned as her wing. 2 F-35s tagged along as high-angle cover. Ghost was grounded, recovery protocol, but he stopped her outside the briefing room. You don't think they're watching the same valley again, do you? I think it's the only one I've flown in the last 2 months, Eden said. Ghost didn't argue. Then don't fly it the same way. 0700 hours. The Raptor was back in the air. New panels, new hydraulic lines, same pilot, same silence on. Comes. The air felt thinner this time, not in altitude, in presence, like the sky knew something was about to shift. Vapor flew tighter than usual, keeping formation with surgical precision. He hadn't said much on the ground. Didn't need to. He'd seen what it cost her last time, and he'd seen what she gave to keep others from paying it. 30 minutes. Into the mission, the landscape began to feel familiar, not in a comforting way, in a calculated way. Canyon ridges, shadow lines, wind shears off the western rock face. Same heat pockets, same air layers, everything the same, except her. This time, Eden didn't dive into terrain. She didn't stay low. She didn't commit to the obvious lines. She hovered above them, waited, delayed her instincts. Let them think. She'd forgotten. Let them think they were still ahead. And 0843, the first return blinked in. Faint, eye, too perfect. Not a threat, a test. Eden keyed her come. Contact, high band, passive return only, no vector yet. Vapor responded without hesitation. Got eyes, still shadowed. Then, a pause. You think it's them? Eden didn't answer directly. They want me to see them, but not to act. You gonna play along? No, she said. I'm going to make them guess. She peeled left, away from the return, and didn't dive, didn't engage. The bandit shifted slightly, trying to follow her angle, not to chase, just to match. It was like looking into a reflection that was always a half-second behind. That half-second was her advantage. Another return lit up, low this time. Not in attack position, just waiting. The net was forming again. But now she saw it for what it was. Not a kill box, a mirror maze. They were trying to draw her in the same way again. If she'd flinch, if she'd act on instinct, if she'd follow a line they'd already drawn once before. She didn't. Instead, she did something she'd never done during a live op. She cut her engine, partially, just enough to drop her speed and flatten her trajectory. A near stall. Without the angle, it wasn't graceful, but it was unexpected. The bandit above adjusted. Too slow. That meant something. They're still watching my last flight, she said over private comms vapor. How can you tell? Because they're reacting to who I was, not who I am. She kicked into a lateral roll and flipped her formation heading. The two F-35s moved to support, but she waved them off. Not yet. Let the ghost come closer. Let the mimic think it's still. Understood her. 5 minutes passed. No missiles, no targeting, just positioning. Then, a lock tone. Soft, high frequency. The ace had entered the arena. Eden didn't flinch. Instead, she did something that broke every rule in every flight manual she'd ever memorized. She turned her back to the enemy. Not in retreat, but in refusal. She climbed. Slow, deliberate, and let her tail cross into the ace's angle. Bait, lock tone increased. She waited 3 seconds, then dove hard. But not toward the ground. Toward the sun. She cut across the light band. Canopy shielded only by her narrowed helmet visor. Her HUD flared with contrast errors. That was the point. The ace would lose her outline. Again, she popped one flare, early, not to counter a missile, to mimic a pass move. Let the ace expect her to repeat it, and he did. He dropped in anticipation, overcommitted. Eden snapped right and pulled the Raptor into a steep spiral, dropping altitude like a blade. As she fell, she rolled inverted and keyed the targeting system manually. No. Lock tone. Just gut, and a mark on instinct. Fox 3. Missile away. No guidance needed. Direct impact. The return blinked off radar. The ace was down. She didn't smile. Didn't breathe easier. But she knew. This time. The mirror cracked first. The remaining 2 returns vanished. No chase. No attempt to pick up the fight. Whoever was behind them pulled back. Too much had been exposed. Too much had been learned. Vapor's voice came through. That was different. It had to be, Eden said. What changed? I stopped fighting the version of me they studied. What does it feel like to outmaneuver something built to break you? Not victorious, not clean, not safe. It feels temporary, because if someone had built a strategy around Eden once, they could do it again, and next time it would be tighter, faster, deadlier. But she had learned something too. They didn't understand her because they thought she was defined by control, by rhythm, by repeatable patterns. They were wrong. She was defined by her refusal to follow any script, even her own. Command ran a full analysis of the flight. The destroyed ace was a ghost on paper. No heat signature, no call sign, no transponder trail, just a blip, one blip. And then nothing but the maneuver that ended it. The spiral dive, the manual lock, the unannounced missile fire that showed up on every log with one note tagged by the analyst. No precedent for this maneuver on file. That was the entire point. Vapor found her in the hangar a day later. She was inspecting the paneling on her Raptor again, not because it needed her to, but because she needed to remind herself that it was real, that it had made it through again. He leaned against the frame and crossed his arms. There. Going to want you to sit out the next run. I know, Eden said. Are you going to? No. Vapor stared at her for a long moment. You think they're finished? No, she said. I think I disrupted the model. That's not the same as ending it. The next operation was already forming. Not combat, not a strike. A recon and sim-op, multi-squadron, simultaneous flybys across 3 sectors. Eden was being asked to brief the teams, not fly, but she volunteered anyway. This time, command didn't push back. Not because they approved, but because deep down, they needed her in the sky. They just didn't know how to say it. In the pre-flight briefing, Eden walked the younger pilots through engagement patterns, the enemy's mimic structures, and the difference between chasing kills and shaping the fight. Then she paused and said something she hadn't planned. Sometimes, your job isn't to defeat them. It's to hold the line long enough for someone else to finish the work. They didn't fully understand it, not yet, but one day, they would. Ghost joined her outside the briefing hall. His arm was finally out of the sling, though he still moved like someone who didn't trust the ground completely. You really think they're done learning from us? Eden shook her head. I think they're adapting in real time now. And you're still flying into that? She looked at him, calm as ever. You think they've stopped watching? No. Then I'm not done flying. That night, she walked alone. No flight suit, no helmet. Just the soft crunch of boots on cooling tarmac and the distant groan of metal as the base settled into its dusk rhythms. She passed the row of jets in silhouette, each one dark, resting in the far bay. The hangar lights caught the edge of her own Raptor's wing. It looked like a scar against the sky, worn, sharpened. Still ready. She stopped just beneath its nose and looked up, not in awe, in recognition. This aircraft had carried her through the kind of silence that only ever had one survivor. It had outflown 5 intercepts, survived a dead stick landing, and held when every predictive model said it wouldn't. But more than that, it had become a message. She wasn't flying to win. She was flying to warn, because whoever was building these mirrored tactics, they hadn't stopped with her. They were testing. Ghost. They were mimicking Vapor. They were learning entire squadrons now, and no one knew how far it would go. Later that evening, the comms officer passed her a data chip. No sender listed, no message. Just flight footage. She plugged it into the secure bay and let the screen light the dark. A single engagement, unknown terrain. 1 Raptor, 4 bandits. The footage didn't show the pilot's face, but the HUD looked eerily familiar, too familiar. The angles, the maneuvers, the rhythm. It was her, or rather, it was someone flying exactly like her. Same throttle usage, same delay between adjustments, same descending roll into turnstile recovery, except she hadn't flown this mission. This wasn't simulation footage. It wasn't her past op. This was someone else, somewhere else, flying her flight style to near perfection. Eden paused the video, watched the screen flicker in the dark. A line of telemetry blinked in the bottom corner. Playback to 3 days ago. Grid 7F, unconfirmed airspace. She stared at the time stump. Someone had already flown her strategy in another part of the world. And the enemy had seen it. They weren't just learning from her now. They were using her. The implications cut deeper than any missile. This wasn't a test anymore. It was replication. She stood up, clenched her jaw, and said nothing. There were still 2 parts of the mission left, and the final flight. was going to be hers. What happens when the threat isn't ahead of you, but behind your own reflection? That's what Eden was now facing. Not just enemies in the sky, but versions of herself. Copied, studied, replicated. It wasn't just strategy theft. It wasn't just mimicry. It was theft of identity, and the only way to stop it was to break the version of her they thought they knew. The final mission profile came in 2 days later. No ceremony, no urgency. Just a folder, unlabeled, inside. A simple briefing. Sector 7F, unknown bandit activity, request for precision sweep. No mention of what Eden had seen on that chip. No mention of the ghost flight. But it was the same airspace, same time, same pattern. She didn't ask for approval. She suited up. The pre-flight prep was the same as always. Same checklist, same crew, same procedures. But everything felt different, because this time, she wasn't flying against a pilot. She was flying against her own echo. Vapor walked beside her on the tarmac. "You sure it's not bait?" "It is bait," she said. "That's why I'm going. You don't owe them this. I'm not going for them." He didn't ask who she was going for. The silence said enough in the air. She kept her formation solo. No wingman, no support. No F-35s on overwatch. This time, Eden was the signal. Not the weapon, not the bait, not the decoy. The signal. At 0713, the first contact returned. Just like last time. High, faint, moving slow. She didn't chase, didn't engage. She hovered, metaphorically, at the edge of her own pattern. Let it build. Let them come. At 0720, a second signal appeared. It moved in perfect sync with her, the way a reflection moves. Not a threat. The echo had arrived. Eden adjusted, heading 2 off the standard sweep arc. The bandit followed. Exactly. She descended into a light canyon drift, a technique she had invented during her second tour. The bandit matched altitude, matched angle, matched throttle. It was her. Not in body, but in pattern. And that's when she understood the real threat. It wasn't that they'd copied her. It was that they were trying to replace her. She dove, hard, pitched the Raptor under a rock shelf and pulled a heat roll between shadow lines. The copy followed perfectly. Eden narrowed her eyes, whispered into her mask. "Then let's see if you copied everything." She pulled the maneuver that wasn't in any manual. A rolling stall that inverted inside a rising up draft, forcing the jet into temporary blackout Gs. A move that only worked if you knew exactly when to bleed altitude without bleeding velocity. No computer could fly it. Not twice. She executed it clean. The copy didn't. The enemy Raptor lagged by half a second, enough to slide wide on the rebound. Eden locked Fox 3 missile away. The hit was partial. Not a kill. The copy flared, twisted, evaded. But now, it was reacting. Not predicting. That was her window. She didn't pursue instead. She turned away. Not toward the sky, toward the canyons, toward terrain so unforgiving no flight sim could model it properly. She flew where only instinct worked, where memory counted more than data. The copy followed, less clean now. Tighter turns, delayed reactions. Eden cut through rock ridges like she belonged there, because she did. The copy? It drifted wide, clipped air wrong, reacted 2 beats too late. Then came the second signature. Another echo, another ghost. They had 2 of her now. At least, they thought they did. She didn't panic. She flew deeper, through windswept tunnels of air pressure so volatile, you couldn't guess them. You had to feel them. The copies couldn't feel. They flew by script, and that's when Eden knew how to beat them. She turned back toward the sun, not to blind, but to erase her signature. She flew into the light so hot and direct, her HUD failed contrast. Her screen blinked white static. Her symbology vanished. She flew blind, but she was never really flying by screens anyway. The first echo peeled off, too hot, too fast, too human to keep the pace. One down. The second pushed forward. Aggressive now. Eden let it. Then she cut throttle mid-climb. A stall that made no sense in tactical logic, but perfect sense in this terrain. She dropped behind the copy in freefall, flipped orientation, and locked manual tone. No time for missile, just instinct. She fired her cannon. The copy erupted in flame. Wings peeled off as it spiraled into the ridge. No parachute, no signal, just silence. Eden didn't climb. She hovered just above the terrain. HUD offline. Fuel blinking red. Voice steady. Targets down. Corridor clear. Command called twice. She didn't answer. Not yet. Not until the sky quieted. Not until she knew no one else was in the air. Back at base, the deck crew waited in tension. No one spoke. No one moved until the controller's voice finally broke through the static. Single contact inbound. No beacon coming in low. Vapor was already walking out toward the runway. Clear a lane, he said, across the western ridgeline. A Raptor emerged, low smoke trailing faint off the right cowling. Same as before, not clean, not perfect, but home. She landed hard, too fast, no flaps, just instinct and timing. The wheels screamed across the tarmac. She let it ride long again. No announcement, no drama, just dust and the whisper of scorched paint cooling under wind. The canopy opened. She stood, helmet off, face quiet, no smile, no salute, just breath. She climbed down and walked the tarmac like it was sacred, because it was not. For the glory, but for what it had cost. No medals, no debrief, no applause. Just the knowledge that the echoes had been silenced, not by force, but by a refusal to become predictable. By the human margin that no machine could mimic. Vapor stood near the edge of the line. He didn't speak, she didn't either, but his eyes told her everything. They'd seen the fight through to its final frame. As the sun dipped, the tower lights flicked on. The Raptor sat behind her, darkened, quiet. One of the crew chiefs whispered, almost reverently, "You think she fly that one again?" Vapor answered without looking, "She doesn't need to." And Eden? She kept walking into the fading light, into the space beyond names and titles. She didn't need the world to remember her story, only to remember this. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.